Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, our esteemed customers, our partners, and my dear colleagues. It's indeed a great privilege to welcome you all to the 2017 edition of Finacle Forum in the heritage city of Mysore. I want to start by wholeheartedly thanking you for taking the time to come here and actively participate in the deliberations of Finacle Forum. After all, it's your enthusiastic participation and ideas which really bring the value which Finacle Forum has now become globally well known for. I really want to express my gratitude on this occasion to each and every one of you. The platform of Finacle Forum has evolved significantly over the years that many of you have been associated with it. We have seen that what started off as a scale where our clients used to come together and meet annually has now evolved under multiple dimensions. We now have our annual Innovation Awards, we have our annual Partner Meet, and from this year onwards, a very interesting dimension which is very relevant to our times has been added to Finacle Forum, which is the FinTech Partner Connect program, for which you will also be getting a glimpse as we go through the proceedings of Finacle Forum this year. While creating an event of this type, it's extremely important that we make it interesting and participative so that you can have some takeaways from this forum. The agenda for this year's forum is aligned to what you have been expressing as a need to know, to learn, and to implement. So we have topics which are wide-ranging, starting from blockchain to cloud to OpenAI to advanced analytics. And I do hope that you will participate and have the benefit of interacting with all the subject matter experts who are present here in plenty from Finacle. Do pick their brains, and I'm sure you will also be able to share some of your own experiences. The way this program has evolved over the last few years, it has become a flagship program where all our customers are able to engage with one another, they're able to network, and the benefits are all very, very well known to you. I want to add by saying the annual Innovation Awards are a reflection of the great work you do, where you fight in the marketplace to retain your position, to understand what your customers expect of you, and also do many things which actually keep them loyal to your own institution. At this forum, we also have, courtesy of all our partners, an amazing showcase of a number of adjacent solutions which you will find very interesting. And I would urge you to find the time to go and visit these solution showcase which are available just outside this hall. Without sounding cliched, I'd like to say that all of you know that everyone makes a statement saying there's rapid change around us, we need to reimagine, we need to realign, we need to rethink our business strategy, our business model, and our offerings to clients. Without getting into too much details, I just want to say that as you work yourself towards meeting the challenge, we want to play an enabling role in that particular journey. The theme, as you have seen in the song, which was just played, as well as from what is written out there, the theme for this year's Finacle Forum is Reimagine. We will be taking you through the deliberations of this Reimagine theme when Sanath comes over here to present, and you will be able to understand what we mean by the word reimagine. Before Sanath comes on stage, I have the unique privilege of introducing one of India's most illustrious sons, Infosys co-founder, a truly global citizen at heart, and a person who is almost a household name in India today, none other than Mr. Nandan Nilekani, who's here with us today. Nandan, as many of you know, is actually an author of a best-selling book. He is actually very well known for the very, very public opinion he has expressed in terms of what is it that we can do to actually have a truly digital economy. Last week, he was in the press because he and his wife came together and joined hands with the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation and made a pledge of a large portion of their wealth to the Bill Gates Foundation. Apart from all this, I would like to stake by saying here that his unique contribution has been what he achieved as the chairman of the Unique Identification Authority of India, where he set out on a selfless mission to actually give every Indian an unique identity. And I just have to recall a short personal incident out here. I was there with him on the last client meeting he took with one of our clients in Mumbai, just before he stepped down from his role at Infosys. And the way he articulated it on that day, the client actually said, "Oh, this is looking very, very difficult. How are you going to do this?" And actually, all of you here in this room today are witness to the fact that more than 1 billion Indians today actually have that identity. And the benefits of the identity are so far-reaching. The implications are so far-reaching that life has become much, much more simpler for everybody. For this amazing accomplishment which he has done, like he has won many laurels. He's been awarded India's second highest civilian award, Padma Bhushan. He's actually been recognized by Time magazine many times over. And I think the future still is unfolding in front of all of us. So it's really a great privilege for all of us today to actually have Nandan amidst us. Without further ado, I'd like to invite Nandan to the stage to share his game-changing experiences with all of us. Thank you very much, and have a great Finacle Forum 2017.
Thank you, Venkat, and it's really wonderful to be here at the Finacle Forum. For me, Finacle has a very special place in my heart because for many years at Infosys, I was there at the beginning of Finacle and I led this group for many years. And so it's really a special pleasure for me to be here today. And I'm really delighted with what the Finacle team has achieved in the last 10 years. They've gone all over the world, they've built great systems, and we are working with our customers around the world to make sure that we deliver value to them. So it's really a pleasure for me to be here today with all of you. I thought I should just briefly, I'll tell you about what I did and then get back to what we can do with you. As Venkat mentioned, I was in Infosys for about 30 years. And then in the year 2009, I was invited by then Prime Minister Dr. Manmohan Singh to join the Indian Union government to do a project to give every Indian resident an ID. And this project at that point was just a cabinet approval, so I was employee number 1 of a startup inside the government. Think about it, a startup inside the government. So I went there and took on this assignment. I moved to Delhi for 4.5 years, and we built this platform, which is really now the world's largest digital identity platform. It has 1.18 billion people on the platform. So most adults in India now have this unique ID. It's called Aadhaar for foundation. It's a 12-digit number, which is unique and randomly generated and assigned to everyone. But the important thing was that we had to do this because we had a country where most Indian residents did not have an ID because they didn't have birth certificates. So, in many of the Indian states, where the governance is not that great, more than half the babies born don't have an ID, and therefore they were all growing up without any proof of identification, which was all right in the old days when they didn't leave the villages, but as they became more mobile and more migrant, lack of ID was becoming a serious bottleneck for them. At the same time, thanks to PMLA and FATF and all that, anti-money laundering rules and all that, the stringency was going up on people getting access to various services, including bank accounts, because you had to do a KYC and so on. So these people who didn't have an ID were actually being shut out of the system because they couldn't participate in the economy. So we said, let's see how we can build a system which can give everybody an ID, which from that day onwards becomes the ID they can use. The second reason this project was done was the Indian government was spending $60 billion to $100 billion a year on various kinds of benefits and entitlements. and they found to their horror that 20 to 40% of that was wasted because the underlying ID system was not robust, and so there's a lot of fraud because there were ghost beneficiaries, duplicate beneficiaries, and a lot of money was getting diverted. So this project came about, A, to provide inclusion to 1 billion people into the economy, and second, to make sure that the government could become more efficient in its distribution of service, of benefits. So we built this technology, in fact it was built in Bangalore, and we built it completely with an open source stack. This was 2009 when open source stack was not that much used in business use, but we built it completely on an open source stack. At the same time, we worked with multiple biometric deduplication capabilities. Because what we realized was that our challenge was, how do we give 1 billion people a unique number? And to give 1 billion people a unique number, you need a way to ensure that somebody doesn't get 2 numbers or 10 numbers or 20 numbers, because if you allow that to happen, then the whole integrity of the system is lost. And if you don't have an original document like a birth certificate, then how do you prove that somebody is unique, that it doesn't have, that is not already in the system? And we came up with the idea that the only way to do that would be through biometric deduplication. In other words, everybody has a unique digital signature from their biometrics, and we would use that to identify uniqueness. But we also realized that nobody had done this before at this scale. Till then, the largest biometric database was about 100 million people in the US visit system for visitors who go to the US. We were planning something for over 1 billion people, so that had not been done. And so we were taking a leap of faith that we could actually deduplicate biometrically 1 billion people. And so we decided that the best thing would be to make sure the system is designed to have as many biometric details as possible, because the more data we have, the more unique the person would be identified. And so we went with a solution which involved 10 fingerprints, the iris of both the eyes, as well as a photograph. And we did find that with this combination of face, photograph, fingerprints, and iris, we actually had a digital unique footprint, fingerprint for everyone, which could be used for deduplication. And otherwise, the data that we had for ID was very simple. We just had the name, address, date of birth, and sex. And we built this system to enroll 1 billion people. And the system was built to enroll 1.5 million people a day. So because we had to get that scale, we had to build a very large system. And at peak, we had about 35,000 enrollment stations around the country, totally enrolling about 1 to 1.5 million people. And then that data was collected across the country in every nook and corner, every village, and securely sent for deduplication. And the deduplication actually itself was a massive exercise, because if we had 500 million people in our database and 1 million new people joined, we had to do 500 trillion matches to eliminate the duplicates. But it worked very well, and we basically made sure that everybody got a unique number. But this was not the only thing. Giving them the number was not the only thing. We said, how do we use this number for various purposes? And one of the purposes that we use it for is authentication. So typically today, when we talk about authentication for financial transaction, we either have what you have, like a debit card or a credit card, and what you know, which is like a PIN or a password. And you combine the two and you get two-factor authentication. So we provided a third type of authentication, being who you are, using biometrics. So today, 1 billion Indians can biometrically authenticate themselves on any device which has a fingerprint reader, an iris reader, or even just a camera with a photograph, and they can do the authentication. So we provided a new way to do authentication at scale for 1 billion people. And then we realized that the challenge of how do we dramatically expand financial services, because in India, and it's true in many parts of the world, only a small fraction of the people had access to financial services. So we developed something called KYC, electronic KYC, or electronic Know Your Customer, which was that the Aadhaar details, the name, address, photo, and date of birth, was sufficient KYC to open a bank account, buy an insurance policy, get a mutual fund, or get a pension, or buy a mobile connection. So we built an eKYC system where somebody today in this country gets a bank account in 2 minutes, just doing with his Aadhaar number, does a biometric authentication, the KYC is done, and the account is opened. And so this is a part of a set of layers we built. So today in India, we do about 1.8 billion authentications a month. So different across the country, different applications are doing about 1.8 billion authentications. And the system has done, maybe 100 million or 200 million KYCs, where people have used electronic KYC to open a bank account or get a mobile connection. And then it's also the basis for digital signatures. So I can use my ID and digitally sign a document. So we have built the world's largest digital signature system where 1 billion people can sign documents. So tomorrow when you provide a bank provides a loan application on a phone, you can electronically sign it with your ID number, and that becomes a document that you can then send. And then we have built also a large system of digital lockers, which allows you to store these documents electronically securely. And then we have built a layer of where you can use your data, because we think that the future is about empowering people with their own data. So we have built a system where every individual can access his own financial records or any other records, and then use that to get a loan or to get better health care. So all these things are actually layers and layers of capability that we built on top of the foundation of the ID. And this is all called the India Stack. And one other piece of work which I did as an advisor to the NPCI was to enable the building of a unified payment interface, which is a very sophisticated any bank to any bank interoperable payment system on the mobile phones. And this system is really taken off. It just got launched about a year and a half back. A year back, it was doing 100,000 transactions. And this month, November, it will cross 100 million transactions. And I believe that will then that will go to maybe 300 to 400 million transactions in the next 6 months. So what I've learned from all this is that you can really apply technology at scale and do very transformational things. And I think coming back to what we have to do here, I'm very excited by the potential and possibilities of what we can do together. I had a very good meeting with the advisory board of Finacle. I've spent a lot of time with the Finacle team. I'm again meeting them on Monday for a very in-depth review. And I really would like to see how we as a company, as the Finacle team, as well as the Infosys as a company, as a group of companies, how can we bring all our talent and knowledge and expertise to bear to make sure that we deliver better and better value for you? So that's one of the things that I'm looking at, is how do we get more and more people to work on the challenges we have. Because I think all the challenges that you have across the world are similar. We have the challenge of rapid speed, commoditization, new digital challenges, or about using new technologies, about using blockchain and learning how to use our data better and so on. So there are lots and lots of things that we have to do. But the most important thing we have to do is to find speed and agility in what we have to do, because I think time is really becoming the defining thing. So a lot of my focus working with our team is how do we bring speed and response time and agility to what we work with all of you to make sure that we deliver on our commitments. And not only do that, we also feel that we have a chance to do things differently. It's not just about us selling you some software. It's about us partnering and seeing how we can work together, perhaps to look at new opportunities that are out there that are yet to be tested. And both of us invest skin in the game to come up with platforms, product solutions, which we can then take together to market. So I think there's lots and lots of things that we can do together. We are investing across the board in building capabilities. We have a strong group today on blockchain, and many of the applications we have developing on blockchain. We're doing one in India with 17 banks, ICICI and others. We are working on analytics and data, and how to use big data analytics and so on to get better insights from the data that we all have. We hope to be able to bring that to the table. We are working on machine learning and AI. Infosys has built a platform combining a lot of open source components called NIA, which is really our AI and machine learning platform, and we hope to bring that to enable our customers to use these new technologies. We are looking a lot at how to bring in more automation to our customers, whether it's RPA or chatbots or whatever, and we'd like to work with you to see how we can bring these technologies to you. So I think there's lots and lots of things that we can do, and I'm very convinced that we are just scratching the tip of the whole thing. As I said, one of the things I've learned working on the Aadhaar project is how to do large systems at speed. So agility and speed is a big part of the work that I've done. How to have small groups of people, how to use integrated DevOps, how to do design systems that can be released very quickly and so on. And that's again something that we'll all work together to make it work for all of you. So I'm very, very confident that we have a huge opportunity in front of us. And I stand here to say that at Infosys, we are committed to Finacle. We're committed to the long-term strategic direction of Finacle. We're committed to making the investments in the Finacle and the Finacle team so that they bring the latest products and services to you. We're committed to not only the Finacle team, but the whole of Infosys and the resources that we have and the talent and knowledge that we have to bear so that we can bring better value for our customers. So that's the commitment that I want to say from my side. I'm very excited by the future. Many people ask, what is the future? I say that, I've been in this business for 40 years. I've never seen such huge opportunities for all of us because the pace of change, the pace of digitization, the pace of new technology, the nature of competition, the nature of what's required is very, very high, which means that if we can work together to solve some of these things, it's really going to create tremendous opportunity for all of us. So I think I'm very excited with the possibilities, and I look forward to working with all of you to making it happen. Thank you very much.
Ladies and gentlemen, if you have any questions, please do let us know. Nandan has obliged to take your questions. Do we have any questions?
If you can choose, and really the choice was yours, where would you work, for Infosys or for the government?
It's definitely Infosys, because you can work for the government, but not. You can work for the government, but not for too long. In my case, I went with a specific mission. I went with a clear objective that I would build this system and get out. And we built a system and I made a public commitment when I joined the government that we would have 600 million people on the system within 5 years. Normally in government, you're not supposed to go and stand up and make such promises. But I'd come from the business world where we're used to giving guidance, so I was giving guidance. We had a budget of about, original budget was about $3 billion. We actually reached 600 million people in 4.5 years. So it was 6 months ahead of the time. And the total project cost to date is about $1.2 billion. And so it was a government project done ahead of time and below budget cost, which is not common anywhere in the world. And today, with the investment of $1.5 billion, the country has saved $9 billion in reduction of fraud in various programs. So it's a very high return on investment also. So anyway, but I think because it had a very time-bound, specific task, I could do it. I won't do it for a living.
So it's great to be here, and we rarely get such opportunities. I would like to leverage on it. There were two things that kind of stood out, right? One is it was a startup within the government, and two, our government, and one of the longest complaints has been that we are very bureaucratic. So I just have two questions for you. What made you believe that it would be possible? And in reality, what made it possible? What is the learning that we as entrepreneurs for tomorrow should carry back?
Well, yeah, sure. Well, first of all, I think what made it possible was ignorance about how the system works. I mean, today I wouldn't go back and do it because it looks impossible. But that time I was naive enough to believe that it was doable. So that's what made me do it. I think it was ignorance. But I think the other question is, how did we do it? I think it's an important lesson on how to do something. One is that you need to get the best people for something like this. And I assembled a team which was a unique blend of very strong people from within the system who were bureaucrats and very strong technologies from outside the system. So we actually had two teams. But we had to, and they were from very different cultures. The government culture was bureaucracy, say you say sir to the guy who joined government 5 minutes before you and that kind of stuff. And the technology team was very casual, very flat, that kind of thing. So very different cultures. But they were all united in one goal, how to make this project work. So I think, and even the government people who came to work for me were risk takers inside government. Only risk takers would come and work on some crazy project. So by self-selection, I got the more entrepreneurial people inside the system. So we were able to get this team together. And the second is to set audacious goals, because the goal was so audacious that nobody had time to bicker around. They had to get the job done. So I think some of these things, and then of course very strong focus on building collaboration. We used to reach out to every stakeholder, every bank, every regulator, every state government, every ministry, every oil company, everyone, to get them aligned to one goal. So I think a lot of time was spent on aligning all participants and stakeholders. And the other big lesson is minimalism, because governments, like organizations, are very territorial. So if you start taking on the job of some other ministry, then they get in, they say, why are you meddling in my business? So it is important to have a very simple, minimal design and scale it up rapidly, and then put layers of sophistication on top, instead of building one very heavy design and trying to get it done, which would never have worked. So the layering and simplicity and enabling over time to build sophistication was a very important lesson for us. It's just some lessons. There are lots of lessons.
Aadhaar is a very successful, here.
Yeah.
Hi. You conceived Aadhaar, and that's a very successful project, worldwide accolades, and a lot of countries looking at taking it. The government of India is using that in many ways currently. As a person who conceived this whole thing, what are the other possibilities or the usage from government of India's point of view could be possible in your opinion?
On Aadhaar or in general, yes?
On Aadhaar.
No, I think Aadhaar is just the beginning. Obviously, the big use case that justified it was the savings in entitlement and subsidies. Already the government, as I told you, has saved about $9 billion. And that is a perpetual benefit, because every year, the more like fertilizer subsidy or interest rate subsidy or electricity subsidy or water subsidy moves from a product subsidy to a cash subsidy, that is going to create huge savings for the government. That's a no-brainer. But also it's a big role in expanding the economy, because what this does, the whole India stack, allows you to deliver services at a fraction of the cost that was earlier. I mean, earlier to open a bank account or buy a mutual fund, you have to go through all kinds of KYC, you have to do a video of the guy, you have to go and meet him to make sure that he is the real person, all that. All that is removed to one transaction where you put your finger, your iris, and you're done. So KYC costs come down, say, from 500 rupees to 5 rupees. That is two orders of magnitude. So when you bring costs of onboarding a customer so low, the ability to expand the market becomes very large. So what you're seeing now is massive financialization of the Indian economy, where it's going to become easier for all financial institutions to reach a lot more customers. It's just simply cheaper to do that, and therefore smaller value customers can also be, the lifetime value requirement is less, right? TCV is less. So we see massive financialization, and I think one of the things you're going to see in the next 10 years is movement of Indian assets from real estate and gold, which is where Indians keep their assets, into financial services. So all that is possible only because the underlying technology allows you to do that at speed and scale. And many other benefits.
I think we have a question at the back, and then we will take yours.
I wanted to ask you a question. I wanted to ask you a question about on the book which you wrote, Imagining India, with your permission.
Yeah.
Somewhere you stated that economic growth has been hampered by the way resources have been allocated. It's been more a top-down approach as compared to a bottom-up approach. Can you elaborate over that?
Can we?
Elaborate over that.
Yeah. Well, I think that the challenge, and again I can speak about the world, and India also. I think the way jobs are going to get economic growth is going to change a lot, because if you look at last 40 years, where the developing countries became richer was by doing exports and by doing manufacturing, right? So that's what happened in Japan, China, Southeast Asia, and so on. And that worked because the world opened up, there was global trade, the WTO, all this, so for 30, 40 years, there was massive expansion of global growth through trade. And that enabled countries to piggyback on that and become successful. But I think that's becoming more and more difficult. So you're actually seeing a period of some kind of deglobalization with a number where global trade growth is lower than global growth. And a lot of restrictions are coming on trade. So that model of global growth through exports of manufacturing goods, that's one reason that's slowing down. Second reason is that manufacturing became highly automated. Around the world today, manufacturing is all going to robots and 3D manufacturing and all kinds of things. And we are seeing that jobs in manufacturing itself will go down because of high-level automation. Just take a company like Adidas, which has 1 million employees in Asia. They're going to have just a few factories in the West, and they're going to make it themselves. And then, there goes 1 million jobs. So that's going to happen in many sectors. Third thing is there's massive overcapacity in China from steel to software to solar panels. So all this means that the growth model will have to be domestic, services-led, where the key is enabling transactions to happen with low transaction costs. So you have to reduce friction in your own economy. And then that creates, economic growth is the bottom-up thing that I was talking about. Anyway, another way to say it is that if you want to create 10 million jobs, it's not going to be 100 companies hiring 100,000 people. It's going to be 10 million companies hiring one extra person because their business is now easier to do. So enabling that, reducing cost of doing business, and that's where the technologies that we have created enable that to reduce the friction. So search costs, coordination costs, transaction costs all go down, and that acts as a lever of economic growth. The other thing is that I think the role of data. I think we are now seeing the power of data, but we're seeing data being used by businesses to sell to you and make money from giving ads. But the real value is if individuals can use their own data to improve their lives. And so if a small business can get a loan using his digital footprint, if a small consumer can get a loan by showing his payment history, then you're creating a whole new dynamic. And I think that's what we see happening. All that, so it's really more bottom-up than top-down. So top-down is more about laying this infrastructure for reducing transaction costs and then getting out of the way.
Very good evening, Mr. Nandan.
Yeah.
Like you did the Aadhaar project, do you have anything planned or in mind, something to be disruptive for Finacle?
Sure. That's a good point. And as I said, I'm going to bring my experience to bear on Finacle to see how I can work with the team to be more useful to all of you. I don't have any... Yeah, I think there's some ideas I have, but let me not open my mouth, and maybe next year I'll tell you about it.
Actually,
Good evening, sir.
Good evening, sir. Leading from the same question, with AI and all the other bots and things that are happening, do you see core banking system like Finacle going away, or are you seeing it adapting to the new conditions?
Well, I think the need for strong back office or core banking systems is not going to go away, because at the end of the day, banking is about trust, about regulation, about meeting the information needs of many people. So I think the one role will be the role of being the system of record. So that's required anyway, and no matter what you're doing, you need a system of record, and that is really only through deep business rules and meeting regulatory concerns of multiple countries and all that you can do that. So that value is there. But around that, you need to create ways to create value, and that's where creating new configurable applications around the core system using APIs, making sure that those systems are very easy to implement so you can launch new products and services to customers. learning how to use data to drive insights so that you can drive business from that, partnering with your customers to launch new products where you share on the risk of doing that. So there are lots and lots of things that Infosys can do to be of value in this new world which is emerging.
Good evening, sir. I have the question.
Hi.
Sir, it's nice to be here and listen to you in person. Sir, after having executed that Aadhaar project so successfully, I'm sure you must have received invites from India and overseas or globally, for such kind of. So just would like to know, so what is your next Aadhaar project of that particular magnitude, next mega project on your cards?
You mean the next?
Next big project, which you're going to lead, sir.
Which I'm going to do?
Yes.
Infosys, yeah.
Thank you.
But I must tell you that we did many other things. One is we designed the electronic tolling system, which has been, in fact, ICICI Bank is a big partner. Some of SBI is also a big partner. So you know that the idea is that every vehicle will have a RFID tag, so that not only it can, when it goes through tolls, it can automatically debit the account. That system has been rolled out, and that is now doing 10 million transactions a month, and about 15% of the transactions today on highways are going through that. That is a big project which I had initiated when I was in the government. I had designed that system in 2010, but now it's getting rolled out. And that actually creates, in some sense, an Aadhaar for vehicles. So while it will be used initially for highway tolling, tomorrow it will be used for congestion charges in cities like Singapore and London have. It can be used for parking, all kinds of applications, because it's just an ID linked to a payment account. So that's one thing. Then the GST network is getting rolled out, which right now we are having some challenges, but I think once that settles down, you'll have a very sophisticated tax payment system across the country. And Aadhaar itself is getting global interest. I'm a member of the World Bank's high-level policy on identity, and I was at the annual meetings in Washington 4 weeks back, and I had meetings with 15 countries which want to do an ID system like Aadhaar, including very advanced countries. I mean, recently I had the UK cabinet minister visiting because they are seeing it, and I have a delegation coming from Australia. So really now, digital infrastructure like identity and authentication is being seen by governments as a fundamental public good that they need to provide.
Thank you.
Hi, Nandan.
Hi.
We have been talking about latest technologies coming in the next years. You're talking about blockchain, artificial intelligence, robotic process automation, and we as a banks might be willing to go ahead. But what is that tip when banks go to the regulators to persuade them to use these technologies? Because sometimes the roadblock comes from the regulator. They don't go onto cloud. The data is private. How you will protect the data? How we can persuade the regulator to do this?
No, I think where there are issues like data on the cloud, I can see where they come from. I'll come back to that. But if you implement RPA in your own bank, reduce the number of people working on business processes, where is the regulator even involved in that? I don't think the regulator is involved in that. Or if you use AI and machine learning inside your bank to get insights, I don't think the regulator is involved with that. Regulators may come in on issues like where is data stored, is it on the cloud? And today, frankly, a lot of the cloud solutions are actually in some sense more secure than keeping it inside your thing, because once you're in the cloud, you're hiding among many people there, So it's in some sense a better place to be. But that will take some time for regulators. But I think on many of the new technologies required, maybe on blockchain they may have a point of view. So I think depending on what the topic is, yes, the regulator will have a view. But there are many, many parts of what we have to do which regulators have no voice or no interest. Well, you can still do that.
And then if you're okay, we'll just take 2 more questions
Sure.
and then
Sure.
So can I?
Hello.
Last 2 questions, please. I think we have another back.
Yeah. So good evening, sir. There is a lot of things being talked about account number portability.
About?
Account number portability.
Yeah.
There were news articles on that. So how do you see that happening, and will it be a reality?
See, I don't think it makes sense to go back and start fiddling with the core banking system to give account number portability. That's not where it is. There are two ways, at least in the Indian context, we can have account number portability. One is through the Aadhaar bridge. To build this electronic cash transfer system, we have an Aadhaar bridge, which is essentially the ID number is connected to the bank where the account is. So this is maintained by the National Payment Corporation. And today we have 550 million Aadhaar-linked bank accounts. Now in some sense that provides portability, because in that situation you have, say you have a bank account, you have a ID number connected to a bank account that is kept in this table. Now if you want to, and that is used for example for as an address to put DBT money or to even to send money. Now, if you open a new bank account, you can just inform the payment bridge that from that day onwards, please put this new bank into that table. So that is a form of account portability, because the Aadhaar number remains constant, but the bank to which it is connected changes. That is one form of portability. The second form of portability we already have is through UPI, because UPI again allows you to link your virtual payment address to a bank account. And that's a revocable address. You can, create a new address. You can point a new bank account. So I think, in some sense, between the Aadhaar-linked bank account and the UPI address, you already have account number portability in India. But you're not doing it at the level of going into the bank account and changing that. You're doing it as an abstraction, where you're connecting pointers to the bank account, and then you can change where the pointer points to. So it's already, in some sense, there.
Sir,
one last question.
Sir, Aadhaar has really helped in financial inclusion and distributing the various government benefits. Sir, we are talking about financial inclusion. So my question is whether Aadhaar exclusion will be there, because if a person dies, whether it will be deactivated, that Aadhaar number is will be deactivated. Because recently UID has launched eKYC authentication through OTP. So is there any plan to deactivate, to prevent these ghost beneficiaries in future? And second small question, sir, when PAN will be redundant once Aadhaar is implemented?
Who will be redundant?
PAN number, permanent account number.
PAN. Yeah, so I think, first of all, I think, in some sense, India doesn't have a robust death. We don't have a good birth certificate system, nor do we have a good death certificate system. So unless we have the information flow from a good death certificate system, we can't even mark that a person is no longer alive. And I think, obviously, biometric authentication will not work if somebody is not there. So that route is not there. But you're right, if somebody takes the phone of a person who's no longer around and continues to use the OTP, but in most systems now, there's a requirement to prove liveness. Like pension systems all have a liveness test. And we'll have to think of ways to do that. Plus, use fraud analytics if you see a pattern of behavior where somebody seems to be misusing another number. On the PAN thing, I think the PAN is still required, because PAN is a business tax ID. And PAN numbers are there both for individuals as well as for businesses. So I think since Aadhaar solves only the individual problem, so we still need an ID for business tax payment. And frankly, it's fine, because the current Indian law, the PAN number has to be connected to Aadhaar number for individuals. That will eliminate all fake PANs. Duplicate PANs and fake PANs will go. But the PAN number can still be used, and I see no issue with that. I think it's fine if there's a separate number for tax ID, as long as you use Aadhaar to make it unique. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Nandan, for that stimulating talk and for sharing your ideas with us. Ladies and gentlemen, Albert Einstein had once said, "We cannot solve our problems with the same kind of thinking we used when we first created them." As we face the tumult of change, reimagining is the order of the day. In this era of rapid technology advancements, there are no dreams too large, no innovations unimaginable, and no frontiers beyond our reach. To speak more on this and how we at Finacle are preparing to lift the theme, may I please request Sanath Rao, the Chief Business Officer and Global Head of Infosys Finacle, to take the stage. Most of you are quite familiar with Sanath, who is no stranger to Finacle, having been responsible for business development for the unit during its highest growing years. It's been about 14 months since he came to lead the Finacle business, and with his global exposure, I believe his perspectives will provide much food for thought for us this evening. Sanath, over to you.
Thanks, Maria. Good evening, everyone. At the start of Nandan's session, I made note of a few words on a piece of paper that's lying there. And it said, remind myself to tell our events team not to have my session after a keynote speaker. By the time Nandan finished and looking at the number of questions that came, I underlined that. The reason I did that is that in the last 13 months that I've been in the company, I think this is the third event, and for whatever reason, each time I seem to come on soon after the keynote. Never a right time, I assure you. So on that note, firstly, thank you very, very much for being here. And I think, like Venkat and Maria mentioned at the beginning, it's thanks to your participation that we're able to make Finacle Forum a successful event every year. Thanks also, I think, to all of our partners whose names are mentioned there. Without their contribution, certainly this event wouldn't have been able to, we wouldn't have been able to pull this off. I think this is the largest of the Finacle Forums that we've had over the years. All told, between partners, clients, a few prospects, and invitees from within the Infosys group, we're going to be over 350 people. So thank you very much for your participation. Earlier today, we spent a lot of time with the Client Advisory Board, the Finacle Client Advisory Board that comprises a set of customers. And I have to seek their indulgence because some of what we're going to speak now is going to be a bit of a repetition of what you've heard earlier during the day. But this is for the larger audience. When I joined 13 months ago, our then CEO of Infosys, Vishal, had called me back, and he had said one simple thing. Given his own background in SAP, he had said it was his strong belief that software was here to change the world. And he'd painted a picture of how software would fit into Infosys strategies and what a big difference Finacle could make in that journey. And that's what really excited me to come back and take this role. Having been in this position for the last 13 months, I can assure you that the 13 months have been eventful, they've been exciting, we've certainly learned a lot, a lot of successes, a few pitfalls, I would submit to that, but most importantly, I think a belief that software is really here to stay. So the 13 months have been very, very fruitful, and I look forward certainly to a little more time. Let me just start with some statistics and then go into the meat of the discussion. We follow in India an April to March accounting year. So 2 months ago, at the end of September, we finished 6 months of this financial year. So I'm comparing the first 6 months of this financial year with the whole of the last year. And as you'll see, we've had some very, very, we've had a lot of success in this time. It's been an opportunity, obviously, to participate in the transformation that many of you are undergoing. It's been an opportunity, I think, to, there's no greater satisfaction than successfully delivering a project. And certainly that's been, plentiful in this period. But most importantly, I think it's been a reiteration that banks today are looking to leverage new generation technology to make their own transformation. I think that, at the end of the day, is the most satisfying feature of all the wins and all the successes that we've had. One of the challenges for a business like ours has been that, like I think some of the questions that got asked to Nandan a short while ago, our genesis was as a core banking player. And for many of the banks who've indulged in core banking change, you'll see the big change that's happened in the last 5, 10 years, right? So 5 years, 10 years ago, the focus was really on core banking change, and the focus was to sort of replace the legacy systems. In many parts of the world, certainly in this part of the world, Middle East, Africa, parts of Southeast Asia, a lot of the banks have already done that. What's certainly interesting is that banks in the Western markets, which for a long time had stayed away from this transformation, that's opening up now. But most importantly, there is this new animal in front of all of us, and it's called digital. If you talk to 5 vendors like ourselves, you'll probably get 7 different definitions of digital. You talk to 5 banks, you'll probably get 10 different versions of digital. The truth is that it's something that's evolving. The truth is that today, a lot of the funding that happens for initiatives in the banks need to be associated with digital in one way or the other. And to us, that's an opportunity. And as the slide shows, I think different banks are today adopting different approaches based on what suits them. And certainly one that we see increasingly picking up is what's there on the top right-hand quadrant, which is called a bank in a bank, which is that you recognize the risk of changing, of uprooting the systems in the ongoing institution. But at the same time, you want to launch a business which has more, the proposition around digital, and therefore you create a new entity within the bigger entity, and that's a bank in a bank. I think just now we also discussed about the disruption that's happening in the market, and certainly at Finacle, we've had the opportunity, I think, to participate in the transformation, and indeed this new form of competition that has emerged for financial services through the non-financial services providers, whether it's the industry disruptors like telecom providers or Paytm. So that's been an opportunity. I was telling someone earlier this morning that this kind of a change is not restricted only to India. And I'll give you one example of a conversation that we are currently having, and which I assure you 3 years ago we wouldn't have had. One of the largest manpower planning companies in the world, which makes remittances of about 1.5 million transactions a day to their contractors in different parts of the world, is talking to Finacle. Nothing to do with banking. They need to make 1.5 million transactions a day to different contractors. 3 years ago, we wouldn't have looked at that kind of a company as a potential partner. I assure you, 3 years ago, they wouldn't have looked at the possibility of turning to a core banking vendor to try and provide their needs. Today, a manpower agency and a core banking provider are talking about trying to bring transformation in 17 countries. That's what's blurring boundaries today of our businesses. And I think as we discussed earlier today in the advisory board, we can't underestimate the wave that's coming in the form of new competition, and it's coming from all over the place. Certainly for us, it's been an opportunity, it's been a learning, but I think most importantly, it's been an exciting time because suddenly there are new business models coming in, and if we are not agile, if we don't grab the opportunities, we're going to lose business. One of the very satisfying achievements over the last 12 months has been in terms of the number of awards that we've won. When I say we, I mean us at Finacle and certainly all of you. There's no better endorsement than some third party recognizing the work that we're doing together. And we are today the provider of solutions with the highest number of awards in the industry. And as you'll see, a variety of different awards in different parts of the world for different kinds of solutions with different clients, some of whom are represented in this room. So that's been really an excellent endorsement of the work that we've done together, and obviously our thanks to every one of these clients. We talked about blockchain. So I think we were one of the first solution providers to move into the space. We started work about a year ago. ICICI, Emirates Bank in Dubai. 2 of our clients who moved into production. Today we've got about 17 banks doing different kinds of pilots with us. Like I said, 2 in production. Different use cases coming up, I think, as banks recognize the possible advantages through blockchain. So that's something that has been exciting. The challenge now, of course, is to take that to scale, right? While the challenge in the last 12 months has been to sort of pilot that and prove the concept, the challenge now before us as a provider of that service, a provider of that solution, really is to take it to scale. And even in this space, there's competition coming from all sides. But this is something that we're going to watch very closely because I think blockchain is going to be one of the exciting new offerings going forward. The last of the slides is statistics, and I think this is something that, today obviously we cover a major part of the global footprint in terms of where Finacle is present. Let's talk about the future. So all of this was the past. Let's talk about the future. While everyone talks about the fact that banks need to change, that banks need to be agile, that banks need to be aware of competition, the truth is that we as providers of solutions, if we are not cognizant of the same kind of change and the onus that it puts on us, it's going to compromise our business. And we are not going to be able to then service our clients as well. And a lot of the thinking that's been happening right now is towards recognizing some of the appropriate industry shifts and preparing ourselves proactively to see what we can do. And I'm going to talk a little bit about what we've done in terms of recognizing some of these industry shifts and making some changes to our own business strategy, which you'll see going forward in the coming months. I was told that my talk today can be up to 40 minutes. In those 40 minutes, WeChat would have transacted over $90 million in China alone. WeChat didn't exist 4 years ago. It is not a financial services institution. But it has completely cornered the payments business in China. When you look at that with the statistic below, 2.9 trillion of WeChat and Alipay alone. Right? I think the point is that the pace of change is much more than it has ever been. We already talked about competition coming from unexpected quarters. But more importantly, I think both in terms of regulation, which is willing to allow a certain amount of competition to come in, and in terms of consumers like you and me, who've traditionally gone to providers of service historically, we are now willing to go to someone who's able to provide it more cheaply, more efficiently, and provide it in a manner that we as a demanding customer base are wanting. So this is certainly something that we are recognizing. Going forward, Paytm here in India, 8.5 million transactions a day on Paytm, and that's already equal to the number of debit and credit card transactions. And I dare say that's going to increase going forward. What we obviously want to do, and this is the theme of today's session, which is as we recognize the industry shifts, what do we do towards reimagining banking and reimagining the future? And what does that mean to us in terms of some of our strategies? And what does that mean to you as our clients? I'm going to talk about 5 strategies that are going to come out as a result of some of these industry shifts. Now, not all of them are obviously at the same level of maturity. Not all of them necessarily have the same impact for every institution in different parts of the world. But it would be wrong on our part to ignore these, and therefore they are beginning to play a role in our own business going forward. In February or March this year, I was in San Francisco. And I met a person who worked with who was working with Tesla. He was telling me about a professor from Columbia University who had taken a sabbatical from Columbia University and had come to Tesla as chief scientist. And do you know what his mandate was? His mandate was to redesign the dashboard of the new Tesla car. And the mandate that was given to him was very simple. It said that to the driver of the new Tesla car, I don't know what model it is, obviously it's something that's futuristic and in production. The mandate that was given to that individual was that here's the driver, you're holding the steering wheel. Tomorrow he may not even be holding the steering wheel in the age of autonomous cars. But you've got this massive space, the dashboard in the car, which up until now was just upholstery. or steal. What Tesla is trying to do is to convert that into a platform. So as you move into an age where you're probably not driving the car, or even if someone is driving, you're sitting there, next to the driver, they're going to facilitate a whole host of transactions being done, including possibly banking, through the dashboard of the car. And the Tesla dashboard is going to become a platform for that individual for many different transactions. This is going on right now. And I dare say that whoever conceived this idea at Tesla obviously has thought big. Otherwise, a professor from Columbia University wouldn't take a sabbatical for 3 years and commit to this kind of a program. Right? So obviously, they've thought of something big, but more importantly, it's something that's, I'm sure, going to be very exciting. What's the point we're making? The point we're making, and I think this is what Nandan also talked about in his session, the point we're making is that the age of the platform is here. The Aadhaar project was a platform, and he talked about a lot of the byproducts are coming as a result of that unique identification that has been given to 1.1 billion Indians. So the age of the platform is here, and what we are saying is that it's important for us to recognize what a platform will mean in the banking context. So let me just explain this in a little more detail. Let's move from top to bottom. Sorry, bottom to top. Traditionally, banks had the self-created products, right? You designed your products, you took it to your clients, and those were branded as your products. Today, with an ever more demanding customer, clearly banks are not going to be able to fulfill everything from just their own stable. And you're moving into a scenario where, because of the money that's possible to be made through the distribution mechanism, whether it's complementary partner products, whether it's joint products with other providers, non-financial products. So all of that is something that's coming into the realm of services that are being offered by banks. Right? If someone points a finger and says, look here, not everyone is doing it, that's not the right question. The question is, are banks going towards that? The answer is yes. But the more important question is that are customers expecting that from their preferred financial institutions? The answer to that is a resounding yes. Right? So this whole array of what's going to be made available through a progressive financial institution, that's going to change. You move up. I think there were questions earlier about core banking systems. The truth is that the core banking system is not going to help you differentiate in front of the customer. The differentiation and all the sexiness that happens through the power of technology is in the middle and the upper layers. But equally true, if banks don't get their bottom layer right, they're going to be hampered in terms of what they can do in the mid and the upper layer. And therefore, all of the focus that institutions today are placing towards contextualization, towards personalization, and so on, is happening there. And last but not the least, if you go right to the top, while banks have traditionally had their own channels where they would use to, to facilitate transactions, through the opening up of APIs, it's creating a new distribution mechanism, which was hitherto unknown. Now, keeping this kind of a landscape in mind, we are moving towards creating our own solution set, which fits into these three broad categories, right? So some of the traditional products obviously are there at the bottom. They're typically the back-end processing systems, the core banking systems, and so on. We've created the Finacle Omnichannel Hub in the middle, and the good part is that the Omnichannel Hub is not linked to the back-end system or the front-end system, so you can take the Omnichannel Hub without necessarily taking the core banking system, or you can take the Omnichannel Hub without necessarily having some of our channel solutions in the front. But clearly we're seeing that that's where the banks are beginning to make all the differentiation towards the delivery of services to customers. And of course, right on top are a whole host of customer touch points. And I dare say with the proliferation of technology, that layer is only going to increase. So we believe that the banking as a platform model is here to stay. And I think this whole space will evolve very, very fast. And certainly we are taking our steps towards moving towards that. The second part is automation. And I think Nandan talked about this recently. This big debate was going on that's whether automation is going to lead to loss of jobs and is that good or bad, and the counter argument saying that yes, it's going to lead to a loss of jobs, but it's also going to create new opportunities, right? Whether it's robotic process automation, intelligent automation, and so on. I think Nandan again alluded to the fact that at Infosys we are doing and developing some of our own systems there. This is something that is still fairly nascent, and I think the proof is obviously going to be in terms of making it richer by the right kind of use cases. And what we've been telling clients is that, as a provider of the service, obviously we can create a certain number of use cases. At the end of the day, it's an opportunity to do something jointly as we enrich that, right? So this is an area where we're going to put a lot of focus as we go forward. Customer experience itself. Now, we've had this debate internally about what is it that we should be doing as far as customer experience is concerned. And I think this is a debate that's been sort of going on amongst other software providers as well. The truth is that today, the customer experience layer is the one layer where banks want to have control, where banks want to have the ability to make changes without necessarily being tied into what the software provider is offering. And therefore, the ability to constantly innovate, the ability to be able to offer different changes there without necessarily linked to what the software vendor himself is providing, that's creating, I think, new opportunities. And certainly, the way we've architected it, we're not going to be able to, so we're not forcing a bank to necessarily have a unified customer experience. If they want to have a different layer for customer experience, that option is always there. We talked about APIs earlier. I think for those of you in India, you would have heard about the hackathon that one of the Indian banks here, Ratnakar Bank, recently did, where they used Finacle APIs on an IBM Bluemix platform. And that was seen to be a very, very successful hackathon that was done very recently. So I think you'll see more and more of these experiences and examples going forward. Certainly, like I said, the omnichannel hub is something that I think banks are going to pay fairly close attention to. And I think they're going to pay attention to this for two reasons. One is that because of the power and the ability to innovate in that middle layer that I talked about, but also for some of the larger banks who are sort of ridden with a lot of the limitations of legacy systems, this layer in some ways allows them to bring in a certain amount of agility which the legacy systems wouldn't have allowed, right? So I think we'll see a lot of action going forward in whatever manner through the omnichannel hub. One of the things that we've been constantly debating internally within not just Finacle but the larger Infosys is that as we take a digital proposition to market, what exactly should digital mean? Right? So within the Finacle portfolio, we've got a certain set of digital solutions. But something that we've added on recently is a company that we acquired, Brilliant Basics. Brilliant Basics is a digital agency based in the UK. It's the largest agency that HSBC was using in the last, I think, 5 or 7 years. I think HSBC has used them in about 35 or 40 countries. They've got a lot of experience in the financial services sector. Besides HSBC, they've worked with some very large global and regional banks. So we acquired them about 3 months ago. And while the integration is still underway, we've seen immediate success. So in the last 2.5 months, the digital agency and the customer experience capability that they bring through some of their services, plonked on top of our digital solutions, that's creating a new dimension of our go-to-market story. And as we speak, we've been able to get 3 customers signed up to this proposition, 2 in the Middle East and 1 in the US, who've actually committed to this. But more importantly, I think it's allowed us to create a new dimension to the digital proposition. But most importantly, it's an offering that doesn't commit you to buying it with the software, right? I think that's the choice we're going to leave to clients, that it's not necessarily linked to the software. You can buy it independently. I think we've touched upon most of these, and I'm looking at the time. I'm not going to explain all of this. Let me just move on. I think there were questions about analytics, and certainly one of the debates we've had is that it's not enough just to have analytics. Obviously, you embed analytics, but how do you translate that into making it more actionable? How do you make it more meaningful for the end user? I don't know how many of you are tennis fans here, but our analytics engine has been built on the Infosys Information Platform, IIP. And for those of you who follow tennis, the worldwide ATP tour, the analysis of all the matches that happens on ATP across the world and all of the ATP events is done through the Infosys Information Platform. Right? So we've got a whole host of analytic capability which tennis is using. What we are now trying to do is we've obviously used the power of that same engine to build the Finacle Analytics platform, so Finacle Analytics solution. We're embedding that within our own solution, so we're not going to sort of sell it separately. We're embedding that as part of our solution and make that available. And certainly this is an area where we see a lot of action as we try and enrich that with the right kind of use cases. I talked earlier about the fact that digital means different things to different people. I think the one other terminology which also is today open to a lot of divergent types of interpretations is this whole word of cloud. What exactly is cloud? Is cloud the same as hosted solutions? How does that fit in the context of virtualization? Right? Private versus public, security, all of that. What I would certainly say is that compared to 3-4 years ago, where I think banks were saying we'll just not move to a hosted environment into a cloud, I don't think that question's on the table anymore. We ourselves have signed up clients in the last 6 months, 2 in Australia, 1 in India, and one of the customers in India is going to speak at this event, I think tomorrow or day after. We are seeing traction for this in other parts of the world. And certainly while the approach is something that will vary from institution to institution, clearly there is a requirement that's sort of emerging amongst financial institutions to look at a cloud-hosted model. As you'll see from the right, we're today working with some of the leading providers of cloud services, and clearly that's going to be a strategy for us because I think there's a demand for a lot of capability around cloud, and obviously we want to make as much choice available to our clients. I talked about the 5 industry shifts. The devil obviously is in the detail. Over the course of the next 1.5 days, my colleagues are going to come here and talk a lot more about what some of these things mean. They're going to talk a lot more about some of our plans. You have booths outside where you'll have some of our subject matter experts to talk more detail about what is that we're doing and what is it that we've done so far. So I urge you to take the time to please understand a lot of that better. All I want to end by saying is that we think that there's no more exciting time than we are presently living in. While there's competition, while there's unexpected competition, I think the fair thing to say is that there's also unexpectedly high opportunities. And certainly we see it in our business, and I'm sure you see it in your business as well. So let's capitalize on the opportunities. Let's not be scared by new technology, and let's look forward. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sanat. Having heard the perspectives from Nandan and Sanat, let's hear from the banks on what they think about reimagining banking and their vision for a sustainable business. The final session for the day, this will be a panel discussion titled Banking 2020, Walking the Talk. Please allow me to introduce the moderator and the panel members. We have Arun Krishnan, the Vice President and Global Head of Engineering at Infosys Finacle, who will be moderating the panel. He's a veteran with over 25 years of experience in product engineering, building new solutions, and re-engineering product organizations. He has worked with Microsoft and Bell Labs in the past and is passionate about nurturing organizations to enable sustained innovations. Our first panelist is Klaus Kruger, who is the CIO of African regions at Standard Bank. With over 25 years of experience in the IT space, Klaus has steered various large banking transformation programs, with the most recent being the 13-country core replacement project. He has been instrumental in various digital initiatives at Standard Bank, which he fondly refers to as a 150-year-old startup. Our second panelist is Madhivanan Balakrishnan, who is the Chief Technology and Digital Officer at ICICI Bank, which is India's largest private sector bank. He is the man behind many of ICICI's key digital initiatives, including the direct banking division and their loyalty services offering now called Payback. He is also responsible for overseeing the business intelligence operations and development initiatives of the ICICI Group digital ecosystem. Our third panelist is Mrutyunjay Mahapatra, who is the Deputy Managing Director of State Bank of India and their Chief Information Officer, heading the entire information technology vertical globally for the State Bank of India Group. He has been with the organization since 1982 and has led many transformation initiatives in the digital, virtualization, analytics, and cloud space. He has won a number of awards at both national and international forums, including the Best CIO of the Year, the top 20 most promising IT leaders in the BFSI sector. Our fourth and final panelist is Shaida Lynch. She's the Vice President of Business Technology at Discover Financial Services in the USA. Shaida heads the application development and system support for the organization and is a key member of the bank's core replacement project, which was implemented in May 2014 for deposits and in February 2016 for personal lending. She has been credited with the smooth integration of the Finacle platform with over 50 internal applications. She was also responsible for the Discover Card operations technology teams, which included the authorizations, security, collections, and card call center application. Ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together for the entire panel. Arun, may I invite you on stage to welcome the other panelists.
Hi, folks. I'd like to take this opportunity to welcome all of you. I have had the pleasure of working with all of you in the FCAB, and I really appreciate your making the time. So I realize we're between all of these folks and dinner, so I'll get right into it. I'd like to start by asking each one of you a question. How do you envision banking transforming in the next 2 to 3 years? And I'd like you to highlight, say, 1 or 2 trends or areas that you think might be important. And we can start with you, Shaida.
Great. Is this working? Is it working? Oh, there we go. All right. So I think in the U.S. we'd say that all banks are going to become direct banks, like Discover. I think the branches are waning. You know, I think they're trying to figure out what to do with all the branches in the U.S. And luckily, Discover doesn't have any. But I think monetizing the branches in the U.S. and making them something like cafes and other things, they're being very innovative about that in the U.S. Differentiating the banks as we all move to digital. What's going to make the difference, I think, is personalization and personalization using data. So the analytics space is becoming very important, and really in anticipating your customers' needs and giving them experiences that differentiate you as a bank. And then I think all interactions becoming real time, and this notion of waiting for anything is definitely a thing of the past, and everything needs to be straight through, and accounts need to be open, money needs to move, and it needs to happen right away. So So I think those are the three things. And for us, we're working on all those things with Finacle as our backbone.
Excellent. Thank you. Madhi?
So, in my perspective, I think banking's foundation today revolves around the branch per se. And I think you highlighted about the fact about how they are going to sort of change, both in terms of physical features as well as the functions that they perform. The core banking, which Finacle provides, sort of brought about a unity among the branches. You could do it from anywhere. And then the various offerings also give us the multiple options. I think over the next 1 decade or 2 decades, we within ICICI Bank see this particular perspective changing. Instead of the customers coming to the branches or we reaching out to them through various technological or physical means, I think we need to find out in today's world where data is all pervasive, customer journeys are becoming a reality, what is it that banks can do? Can we be there in those particular journeys, which is primarily contextual banking, banking driven by data, and therefore the distribution happening through a technological interface. I think that's what is driven. And like Nandan pointed out, there are these multiple ecosystems which are evolving in a big way. So what are those ecosystems which will be relevant for us? Banks have always been structured as corporate banking, SME banking, retail banking, and say the agricultural in our case. I think those compartmentalizations will sort of shift and it will become propositions which are weird around journeys and how we will respond to it, whether it is real time, whether it is in batches, all these things are going to change. And one last area is, till now we used to be driving it, and I think Sanat also pointed out in his presentation, we were standalone, we were building product propositions and we were distributing it. Now is a world where we partner with people, we partner with like-minded people, we partner with technology companies, we partner with fintech, and try to find ways of bringing these new propositions down to the consumer, both B2B as well as B2C. That's our perspective.
Excellent. I think we're lucky that we have people from different parts of the world. So, Klaas, I will ask you, do you see the same trends in your part of the world?
Yeah, thanks, Arun. Definitely. I guess firstly, I think it's worth noting that the core banking systems and what we do with typically Finacle systems and the legacy is not the differentiator. The answer lies into reacting to what the customers want and also lately to how the staff working for the bank react with what tools we provide from a technology point of view. So if we want to win in this game, the first thing is to understand really what the customer means, and we as IT staff mostly in this forum need to understand that the customer is not the business people we serve, but the actual customer of the bank that's out there in the branch and using our digital channels. And without that understanding, I think we will keep on trying to provide solid back-end banking services and so forth. The second thing is, I think, and I want to take out, I asked the same question to Nandan today. So when I asked him how long will banks survive, his answer was, and I think I totally agree with that, is we will continue to be there forever as banks, but the incumbents and the fintechs and the MNOs will chip away at our offering, and they will take the sexy stuff away and leave us with the boring core banking at the back. So the sooner we understand really how we can attract the customers and make their life easier to bank with us, the better we'll be. And I think that's a transformation we all have to go through, and that's the most difficult thing, is because we are so heavily regulated, and that's the bread and butter. Yet we need to find a way to bring it closer to the customer.
Thank you. Shaina, if I may, since Discover started as a digital bank, I mean, if you look back, you probably started with an idea of how the last 3 years would have been. What was it that surprised you the most?
So I think we were surprised how long we would be on our transformation journey. I think we were a little naive, and how all-consuming it became. I think we would rather have been doing and leveraging the capabilities that we've implemented, and yet we're still working on migrating the other businesses onto the platform. So we haven't really been concentrating on leveraging and really capitalizing on the opportunity that we have here. I think so. I'm feeling a little bit regretful that we haven't been more innovative and we haven't been able to move forward with some of our big plans as we've been sort of hampered by the transformation. having said that, I'm glad we started when we did, because now we're sort of ahead of the game and the transformation is in our rearview mirror, and now we are getting to the exciting part of this and being able to put new products on, be more agile. The speed to market, is very important, and I think we are well positioned as a bank. So I think those are the things I would say is I think we thought we would be done and we'd be already moving ahead and doing some of these exciting new innovations, and I think that's probably now in our future a little bit. But those are the things I think that we probably underestimated, I think, the all-consuming nature of the program.
Excellent. I'd like to build on that a little bit and ask you, class, as you think about the future, what do you think might be the hardest priorities that you have ahead of you?
So the first thing we need to do is to understand as an organization and as bankers and IT people is that we need to do stuff differently. So the way we did things in the past was sort of driven from the IT world, and then the business adopted, and then like our customers in the same manner had to adopt what it is we do. In the new world, one needs to make sure that you get our colleagues working in the business to become with us and to change their mindset. And there are a few case studies that we're grappling with as an organization is how we drive adoption of the new digital channels, because one would assume the customers would just take them on, but one finds that people still go to branches to do traditional banking, even though they are very sophisticated and fit-for-purpose channels. So I would say to get the people in the organization to be with you on the change and to get our customers then into the habit to do it. The second thing is one needs to be courageous to not shy away from this and stay true to it. So the big and difficult undertakings around core banking replacements, one would seem that that's the difficult part. But now that it's behind us, and we're very fortunate that we've started with that a while ago, and we've migrated most of the territories in the Standard Bank Group. And one would think, if you think back now the systems are there and the big work is done, but in reality that's not the most difficult thing. The difficult thing now is to get the adoption right. So now the hard yards around application, architecture, simplification, sweat the asset, getting rid of all the old things, and one would thought that that's easy, but that is probably the more difficult one and would require more tenacity.
Excellent. Madhi, if I may ask you the same question. As you look forward, what do you think will pose the greatest challenge for us in the next couple of years?
See, while we will continue to be engaged with a lot of these new initiatives, I think building a much stronger core, which is run the bank and make those necessary changes to ensure that your core remains intact, will continue to be a top priority, because that's something which will always remain. Again, Nandan pointed out that the core banking systems, the system of records will be there, because at the end of the day, what we have is the biggest strength that we have is the trust, and trust comes with our ability to be compliant, to be well regulated, and never give an opportunity to the environment for the customers not to trust us. So I think that will continue to be taking away a big chunk of our time, and I don't see that changing in a big way. The challenges are effectively the ones which are happening on the fringe. We as an organization, in fact, the first core necessity is also the biggest weakness, because when you're trying to run a ship in a particular way, people, I wouldn't say they become complacent, but that itself becomes such a heavy kind of a responsibility that all your orientation as a bank is focused on that. And I'm not talking only from a tech perspective. This applies similarly to the business models. The existing business models are working, so why change them? It's generating enough revenues, you're answerable to the investors and shareholders and all that. The same investors and shareholders will come and say, how are you preparing yourself for tomorrow? And I think the challenge there of trying to find a different way of working, becoming much more agile, not just from a lip sync perspective, but actually creating that culture which understands this new world of journeys, using data and delivering technology while we can evangelize it, trying to make that a reality is a big deal. I mean, not just from a top level sponsorship, from your board, from your MD and CEO, but also in terms of how people see this as a career, how are they willing to handle ambiguity, I think the cultural part of it is the biggest ever challenge. There is technology available, people will imagine the world, making that a reality and executing it, not just within the organization, but even with partners like you. I think that's going to be a mega challenge for all of us.
Yeah, absolutely. So Klaus, if I may again build on that, as we think about some of the challenges, it's not going to be an easy road, and we are going to take audacious, courageous decisions together. What would you see as a good signal to pivot and fail fast?
I think there are many signs, and none of us want to see it because we are so entrenched in what it is we want to do. And by pivoting, and I assume, Arun, you mean that to change the tact and abandon what you're busy with and do something different. So the signs are always there. It's about us understanding and reacting to it, and be brave enough to call it. But I guess the more important one is to be willing to pivot. And in there lies a lot, because many people think that if you had to abandon something you started, that's bad. So we've got a philosophy we live by that we try many things and we fail fast. And then when you fail quick enough, the impact in terms of the lost money spent and time that you've lost is not that severe. And then how you arrive at is to do smaller things and not undertake big things now that you have a solid core banking system in place. And try and break up the objective into smaller deliverables. And that's what we call new ways of work, where we have successfully partnered with our business partners that now live with us. So there are no more IT and business teams, the way we work with feature teams. And I must say, hats off to the Standard Bank business that came to the party with us, that now live and work with us on it. So we don't have to spend months and years developing solutions in absence of true guidance from the business. And quickly one can then, because you're busy working with them and you do smaller things, you'll quickly figure out that it's time to move on and abandon what you're busy with. And then using the agile type delivery mechanisms do allow one to do it, because if a certain part of the solution fails, it's not to say that the entire thing will fail. But as you build on with it, and with that regular impact and quick delivery cycles, you get the oxygen and you quickly see what works, and you can also then sort of change the direction in flight and not wait till the end of a big thing before you then realize it's a problem. The best use cases are the ones in live production environments where people actually work with it, and that's how we learn, and we can then, as I say, change direction in flight.
Excellent. Shada, if I may ask you that same or similar question, how long is too long to wait for good ROI in looking forward?
Yeah, so I think I would agree with Klaus in saying that you have to keep innovating and put things in and try them. And I think what we've done traditionally is we've tried to perfect whatever it is we want to put in, and then we massage it and we perfect it and we perfect it. And it takes so long to get out into the market that by the time you do it, you've missed the opportunity. And so I think we've really changed the ecosystem now, and we're putting things into production every month. So the business with IT is working together to test into production. So you're putting something out there. Maybe it's the 5 of the 10 features that you thought the customer wanted. They're insistent that the next 5 are really what's going to change the world. But you put the 5 in, and then you find out, what we thought was really going to be important is really not actually resonating with customers at all, and we need to switch and pivot and change direction. And we're able to do that, and we provide this cadence of change so that the business, and we always know something's going to come next month. If you miss this month, don't worry, next month you can get it in, but you can also change your mind, and that's okay. We used to think, oh no, they're going to change their mind, requirements are changing, but now it's what's really resonating, what do we really need to do, and let's pivot. Let's just change course. And it's not a failure, it's actually an education, and we really haven't risked too much, we haven't spent too much, and so we're willing to take those chances now. And I think that's really changed, the culture of what we put into production, and how we think of these products and how they evolve. Things are changing so fast now. It's hard to keep up, and I think we just need to be a little bit ahead of the customer instead of always catching up and being a little behind. So I think I think that's really what's changing now. And I'd say that if you have an idea, it's don't wait. So I think go out there and try it and learn and partner with people who've done it before. Come to things like this and talk to people about what they're doing and get ahead of the curve.
Excellent. So, it's as much about mindset and culture as it is about technology, right? And ways of working, as you said, class. If I may extend that a little bit, Madhi, are you challenging the ways you're working with people you consider your competitors in this new world? Would you consider cooperating with them? Some examples where you think you might?
No, 100%. I think it's again one of those pivots. If we realize that there are certain things that someone else can do much better, either because of their core strength or just because they have deep pockets and nobody is questioning them. It can work both ways. So if there's someone who's sponsoring you to bring about change, given your situation in the pecking order, can you play that game or you would rather partner? So that itself becomes a pivot. Your ability to partner with, let me take an example. Partnering with a Google was a no-brainer because we genuinely did not believe that there is a conflict of interest. They are working on their core, which is search-based, advertisement revenue-based. And like a bank, we would like to own the customer relationships, do what we do best, whether it is transaction businesses, lending businesses, liability business. So when there is such a meeting of minds, and there are some things which they do very well when it comes to microtransactions, ability to change the unit economics, I think collaboration is a no-brainer. It is just, the debate is usually about who owns the customer. And therefore, to what extent are you giving away? What starts off as a partnership can actually become a big default giving away way to somebody else. So that's why ability to select the partner is very critical. So business dynamics, what is the role that they are playing in the ecosystem at that point of time, or a genuine, unique technological capability that the partner is bringing. Because in the early decades, tech was an enabler. We were the backroom boys. We were making things happen once business had thought about it. So the biggest story always used to be an ROI based on cost. Even when you spoke about that 1.2 billion spent versus a 9 billion return, it was a cost. It was not driving any new revenue per se. Yeah, you are saving, you are reducing wastage, you are ensuring corruption free. And that's the best use case that even happens today. But are you able to generate a completely new revenue stream which hitherto did not exist? Or you're driving dramatic value because of which customer stays? If we as a bank, if we operate within the realms of a regulated environment, if there is a partner who can bring that value, either tech, behavior, consumer insights, new value proposition, I think that's a big pivot. If you don't recognize and join them, then we will stay behind and we might actually become irrelevant in the scheme of things.
It's a great point. So all of you speak about APIs, and isn't there a risk that if you expose APIs, then you become, quote unquote, a dumb pipe, just handling the transactions while you give away the customer relationship?
I'll take a shot at that.
Okay.
See, again, it comes back to the same unit economics. If we were to go back in the standard way of how we conduct transactions, the classic onboarding, transaction management, and believe that a bank can do everything, I think that's getting changed. My cost of doing those businesses will always be high. I will never be viable, and the customer will find alternatives. The payment banks are a fantastic example of a particular niche being created, which technology is driving the agenda. So what are the best way that we can do? And if we are seeing innovation happening outside, even within for your own employees, when it is an internal API for your internal silos to collaborate with each other, and an external API world which tells them, you guys have a better solution, like we saw in the FinTech Connect today. Each one of them is working on a very unique niche. They are not working on the entire, but the kind of capability that they could bring is enormous. And if we are in a position to show off those APIs and invite people to come and work with us, as long as security is maintained, as long as regulation is within our control, and I'm not giving up on overall perspectives, I think API is way to go. So that fear is always there, that is there a better mousetrap? In such cases, at least in India, we believe the regulator will always be with us. So while there are some weaknesses, there are some strengths which a regulator brings to the table. So that's the way I would look at it.
Okay. So if you look at another market other than India, is there a line you will not cross? Is there something you will hold on to and say, look, this is something I need to own? I mean, I'd like both of you to respond to that.
Yeah, I think back to RBI regulated, so certain things you will never give away because your banking license is what you need to retain. But I guess the differentiator here is we need to think differently about our clients. And what I said earlier is everything we do must be to the benefit of the ultimate customer of the bank, not necessarily who we think the customer is. And in the new world, you'll find that you'll have customers to the bank which is not the bank's customer. In other words, if you want to be the financial services engine or the payment engine behind the transaction for people buying consumables with another bank's credit card and revenue, so that's where you need to play then. So I guess from a mindset point of view, you need to be able to provide a technology stack with all the requisite attributes around security and how you make it available so that you can have anybody plugging into your system and you should be able to choose. So we know we need to get to the world where we understand our customer and we would like to provide what they need, and we are on a large journey to do that. But some cases you have to join them and not beat them. And I guess the competitive advantage would be is if you are in the driving seat, that you can choose who you would like to do business with and who not, by having out your API layer in place. So that's my challenge to Infosys, is to work with us on co-innovation and put proper integration layers there that would stood the test of security and so forth. And we don't want to build all of those ourselves. We want you to take on the challenge with us, Arun.
Yep. Okay.
Yeah, so I think what I would say is, our customers want to interact with us in the way that they want to interact with us. And so we need to be able to provide as many options as possible. And in that case, tightly coupling yourself or building the products within and holding tightly means you're always going to be behind because it's evolving so quickly. So the only way to really stay up with and be available to your customer is to be able to put the APIs out there and connect with the fintechs who are doing this and concentrating on these niche capabilities and they'll do it faster and they'll do it much better than we can do it internally. So, we would be fools to not, kind of partner and be out there and be available and then therefore be where the customer is. So, we don't know what's going to happen next, the next big thing, right? But we know that if we are open and we have our systems open, that we're going to be able to at least partner with them and provide that service to our customers, and so we won't lose the customer in that case. So I think it's inevitable at this point that there's, except for giving away trade secrets or PII or any of those things that the regulators would frown upon, I think everything is really open.
Again, just probing a little bit on that, in a world where banking appears in the context of what people want to consume, as you mentioned, perhaps as a fintech experience, what actually defines your experience? What makes you unique? How do you think of that?
The bank itself?
Yeah.
Well, again, I think this goes back to personalization. So I think what's going to make us unique is, are we fast and agile? Are we frictionless? Are we where the customer wants us to be? Are we able to provide the services in a way that's easy to use? Do we understand our customer in a way that we can offer them opportunities and anticipate their needs before they even need them or ask for them? I think those are, and then building that loyalty. I think one of the things that's still true is that people don't like to move banks. So if you can get your customer and build the loyalty and provide the services in a way that's, they find value in, they're not going to move. And I think then you'll have a customer, hopefully for life, but at least for a long time. And I think that's going to be the key for us.
Great. Adi, would you like to also take a shot at that?
In two ways. I think banks or financial services would always remain relevant for two primary reasons: trust and security. So to that extent, they will come back to us. But I think there is another area besides this. Anybody who helps them make their money work harder or genuinely in their financial well-being, I think that would be useful. And that, for a B2B customer, which is from either an SME or a corporate, what is the relevance that the bank plays in that ecosystem. And these ecosystems can be different for different people. I think we will have to, instead of being the classic universal bank that we used to be proud about in the last 2 decades, which is try to be a banker for everything, try and do everything. I think that is getting away. It's becoming either unviable, or you are letting out a huge section of a population which today's model does not allow me to serve. So how is it that we can bring technology ecosystem to go back right to that very low-end customer, because my cost to serve can come down either due to tech or due to the various mobile being taking off in a big way, can be device. So that's one area. So how do I reach out, not as a social initiative, but genuinely because it makes business sense in a sustainable manner, and only tech can enable that to be done. Again, Aadhaar is a fantastic example how it suddenly starts becoming sensible. So that's one way I think banks will have to reinvent themselves. And the other is, again, from a viability perspective, lending, which is typically starts what we call as a virtuous cycle in any economy, lending to a business, lending to individuals, trying to increase their bid. Today is still a very manual activity. While we might have a credit bureau, we will have your own internal data. There are these alternate data mechanisms coming in. The penetration of credit into the society is still very low. I think here again, tech, data is opening up a completely new world of opportunities, both from a context perspective. Are you there at the right time? Not necessarily try to push a loan. And are you able to evaluate the intent and the capacity / capability in a very unique way? So this combination of data, the kind of digital exhaust that you leave behind, whether you're working on a social app, a WeChat and Alipay is a fantastic example. The kind of multiple industries that they have created at very small ticket sizes but huge books is a new business model. And how we will be able to be prepared ourselves for that kind of an environment is what will differentiate classic legacy banks versus the new age fintech / fintech oriented banks that will come.
So one is moving quickly and adopting that model, Madhi. The second is, let's say there's a couple or 3 banks that move actually quickly, and how would you differentiate from an experience perspective?
What would differentiate that whatever wave you ride will not last for more than 18 months.
Okay.
So try to continuously, don't try to ride every wave, pick up the waves that you want to ride and drive it. And there are some banks within our country who have picked up 1 or 2 and they've built on it. I think those kind of advantages that you build are huge. And I still believe that in these various ecosystems, pick up logistics for that matter, or trade, each one of them today is still an extremely cumbersome, manual based process. Technology has actually not made a big impact in the way we evaluate or the way we give money. So I think that's where new technologies like blockchain, or for that matter, ability to use at least the fast money part of it. Transactional element needs to move to tech. The more complex judgmental related items needs to be still with human beings who are classical bankers. So I think that ability to differentiate what I call a fast money and a slow money. Slow money, deliberation; fast money, tech should take over. I think that's where, and you have to decide. If a competitor picks up one, there are many other alternatives which you want to build on and work. In some cases, collaborate with them, like the way we are doing in blockchain, all 17 banks coming together. Yeah. So the sum of all is much greater than what we would compete with each other.
Right. So in a world where you are collaborating and partnering, class, how do you think of security? Because one of the things all of you use the word trust. How would you ensure trust in that kind of environment? How do you think of that?
I think it would be arrogant to say that you can ensure the trust or ensure the security, but what would be the responsible thing to do is, and this is the approach we've taken, so we've got invested quite a bit of time and effort in security teams, and the way they do it is they've got a red and a blue team, and maybe some of the guys use the same tactics. So we continuously hack ourselves, and with that learnings and being part of the bigger industry, we've come up with security standards and call it the recipe of how would one need to fight the cybersecurity threat. And that is what we publish to all of the countries as part of the group, and then that's how we deal it. So we hope that by being on top and be proactive about these things, one would come up with the guidelines and how one need to protect yourself. I think working also with in the digital space, every week the thing changes, so you need to be so aware of what it is, and with that comes agility, not just to deploy new features, but to really be on top of the game to make sure that whatever solutions you have out there can be changed, so one can adopt new security preventative measures and not get stuck with something that will take you so long to change that you actually have to take it down. And then I guess that's where the trust is broken. So either when you have a security breach or when you need to take systems down because you're scared of it, that would be the situation you would like to avoid.
So I'd like to ask each one of you two questions. One is, what are some of the non-tech challenges that you see looking forward? And then I have one more question that I'd like to give you some time to think about. If you were to make one really bold prediction, and say 3 years from now we gather back and you'd want to make a really bold prediction that you say, look, I could foresee or look into the future, what would that be? So I'd like to give you some time to think about that. But if you could answer the first one, what are some of the non-technical challenges that you see in the next 3 years? Class.
The first thing is one deals with people, and people change their mind all the time. Our customers are much more demanding than ever. They want instant gratification, and there's a 7-second rule. If you don't have what you need on the app in 7 seconds, you will not probably come back to get it. So it's our ability to, as business people and IT people, understand people, what they need. And then, as I said when I started off on the first question, is our colleagues working with us, because in there is also something one needs to be very mindful of, because how do we keep our teams, business people, and even the frontline staff up to date with what's happening and how they need to react to all of these new things.
So I think the challenge is, how does the business adapt and change, and how does our work move forward into the future? So what I mean by that is, traditionally IT was a bottleneck, and so we were the gatekeepers of what could get into production, and so there was this huge backlog. Now we're not really the bottleneck anymore, and so now anything is possible, and we have this cadence, and so now it's the right prioritization, and how do you work on the right things and get focused on that. And I think the bringing together of business and technology into units that work together and actually determine these things together as a partnership and no longer the order taker means that there's a lot more dynamism, I guess, in setting the priorities and then changing the priorities and working through that over and over again. And that takes a different type of management system. And I think that's going to be the biggest challenge now, is how do you change the entire organization to think differently and prioritize the work and then bring it down to technology.
And you also mentioned be a learning organization.
Right, right.
So I think it's very similar. People from two perspectives. One, the skill sets. While they all come in with what is relevant at that point of time, whether it be technology or I think whether they will continue to remain relevant even within a 3-year window is a big non-cultural challenge. Other is the mindsets of the same people. You'll always find comfort in what is working well. So it's whether it be a process. So processes actually become a good defense. So ability of people to continuously change with times, both in terms of the knowledge that they're building and the ability to recognize how things are changing and continuously make them. So we are an 80,000 member team. So which are the teams which need to change fast? So this has become a virtual society within a huge organization. I think that ability is what takes a long time. So we need to move much faster, and hopefully the businesses will drive us towards that.
So can we go, class?
So I'm convinced that in 3 years when we meet again, Arun, you and I will be more grey. We'll have less hair.
I love less hair. That's a good one.
Now, I say in 3 years, if we have not found a way to make our customers the experience they have with us personal, we will not have customers. Because with the advancement of AI and digital channels, our customers seem to be drifting off more and more, and technology is doing more of the work. If we have not figured out a way to be close to our customer and know them, we would have lost the game.
By the way, I asked for a bold prediction. I think no hair wasn't a very bold prediction.
I hope I have hair.
No, it was me. He was talking about me.
I think I'd say that going to be all direct banks. I think this notion that there will be people going to the branches to take care of their banking business will probably not be true anymore, because we'll be able to do everything online and it'll be faster and frictionless and easy to do, so people will prefer it. So that'll be my prediction.
So for me, I think something which I don't want to come true is some of the people who are in the adjoining world actually get a formal regulated license to jump in, because they're bringing in skills which we as banks will never be able to do. I think that seems very obvious, whether it's an Amazon on one side or a WhatsApp on the other side. I think the capability is there. And if there is a way where they are able to establish that whatever they are bringing to the table is going to be genuine value addition for the end consumer and for the society at large, I think we might be redundant if we do not come to the curve. So that seems to be a prediction which is a bit worrisome, and how we will sort of weave into it is a challenge.
Okay. That's great. Any questions from the audience? I think we have one.
Good evening to the panel. Actually, when you said bold prediction, so there are a lot of news about cryptocurrency. So I want to ask the panelists the same question, and Arun, per se, from a technology perspective, if that percolates into the society, how are we ready for that?
Klaus, you want to take the cryptocurrency?
I think it's a gamble. I don't know. We've done so much work understanding it, yet the little use cases in the actual business application, I was hoping to see more of the groundbreaking success that ICICI and Emirates Bank did a year ago. But in reality, everyone would have thought that there would be millions of transactions flowing, and our regulators are very slow to move on this. So I think the technology part I'm very comfortable with, because I think we've cracked it. We know how to deal with it. But the adoption by regulators, lawmakers, and those type of people, I think we still have a way to go there.
Yeah, I would agree. I think we just haven't really found the right use case for it, and especially with us being a U.S. retail bank, even the cross-border remittances doesn't make sense for us. So, and we are finding that there is some apparently weaknesses even in the crypto space. So the adoption just isn't there. Interest isn't there.
So cryptocurrencies, at least at this point of time as it exists, seems like a big bubble. The number of ICOs that are coming in, valuations taking off. And some of our interactions, in fact, in this Emirates NBD ICICI transaction that we did, I had the opportunity to go and present into our regulator in India. And they were actually very impressed with the way the entire process was going along, the kind of efficiency that it brings in, bust bureaucracy. They had only one warning, I wouldn't even call it an advice, a warning to us, saying that at no point of time would you actually move electronic currency between international borders. So we had validated, we had anticipated it, and we actually had put it saying, even if 100 transactions or 1,000 transactions happen in a day, it will happen on a bilateral basis. The end of day settlement will actually happen through a SWIFT, which they understand. So I think they are very worried about not having an underlying entity on which they can base this cryptocurrency. And the other evils, which is anonymity, etc., which we call it as a strength, is a strict no-no. So while technically it is possible, and like some of the nations are talking about it, Sweden, Japan, Russia, I think within our own country, till the time we bring everybody up to scale, even coming into a very closed loop cryptocurrency from an Indian perspective seems a long, long way off.
And I think you'd asked from a tech perspective, right? Our approach from a tech perspective is, first of all, as you know, we have built this blockchain network that was built on blockchain technology, right? But if you look at our stack, we've also insulated ourselves from a specific technology. So we actually are multi-ledger technology compliant already. So in that sense, we're not bound to the blockchain stack. We also recognize that we have to have, live in a world where there'll be multiple ledger technologies. And we are actually ready for that today. That's sort of the step that we can take. And I think I agree with the panelists here that I think the best we can do as a technology provider is prepare ourselves and then be ready to take advantage of that opportunity when it arrives. I think also you heard that the scenarios that you'll see play out will be more along the lines of smart contracts, trade finance kind of scenarios, and that will allow us to mature the stack. And should the day come when cryptocurrency becomes very viable, then we're ready. Any other questions?
We are talking about bold predictions. Can you really predict that there will be no branches? If so, what is the timeline we are looking at?
From my perspective, the answer is no. We, along with Infosys only, around 8 years back, when Mr. Kamath was the leading our bank, we started something called as a B2. We called it branch-free banking. We were extremely convinced that a proposition which offers a much better returns to the customer without a physical, he didn't even want a debit card. RBI forced us to give a debit card. We started off in a big way, picked up very smoothly, but after a particular level, when we started saying, why is it sort of virtually stagnating? And this was 8-9 years back, and we are not talking about last year or whatever. The biggest issue is no. For us, bank stands for trust. We need a physical edifice where when things go wrong, I would want to come and meet a human being. I think that behavior is not changing. Even in the Nordic countries where we talk about a 95, 92 odd percentage of digital transactions, branches are shrunk in size, but there is that symbolic representation. And ING, which made that a very popular, I think other than international markets where they do it because of cost reasons, not because of a proposition, they still believe in a physical edifice. So I think that will remain. And to that extent, I think trust, security, reputation, all are golden. So I certainly do not believe that as a bold prediction.
So Discover Bank is already there. That's why, for me, it's a reality. We don't have any branches, and we are growing year over year by a lot. So we have competitors in the U.S. That are also like us with no branches. So that's in our market. It certainly seems that the banks that have a lot of branches are closing them. They're consolidating them. They're trying to understand what to do with all this real estate. They're converting them into other types of community spaces that happens to have a bank, or are just ATMs really with very few people there. So I think to the point of building trust, we need to build trust in different ways. We can be there and be there for our customers when they need us, and if there is a concern or an issue, we certainly have the onus is on us to make sure that we're available without being physically present. And that's been our challenge, but I think we're doing very well at that. And so, I don't see it as a hugely bold prediction, actually, because we're already doing it.
So I said earlier that if we haven't figured out a way to have a relationship with our customer, given the rapid change and getting into a digital world, we will have no customers left. If that might be a branch, I'm not going to say well, I can predict it. I think the mechanism you choose to have a relationship with a customer, that might be a branch, depending who you are and where you're operating. And also the maturity of the market you serve. I'm sure that there are many people like my mother, she will go to the branch, and if we take the branch away, she'll take her banking elsewhere. But my kids don't know a branch, they use the app. And I guess that's the balance you need to strike, not suggesting that old people will go to branches and kids won't, because they will also get old. And they might have different needs over time. So that's a very difficult thing to do. I think that if Discover had to open 10 branches and then see if their customer base increased, that'll be a real use case. So maybe there's your challenge.
Great. Thank you. Any other questions? There's one more here.
Yeah, just one question, possibly this just might help Infosys, but we have different markets, different perspectives, it's very interesting. Is there any blind spot that Infosys carries? Because they're providing the core banking for a country where branch is never going to go away in the near future. They're working with countries where the branch is really not required, it is just purely software and the technology layer. So is there a blind spot?
This question is directed to
No, it's quite, the question is to the panelists. Do they believe there is a blind spot that Infosys
Are we missing
has?
something?
I'm sure we don't know it all, so there might be something amiss. Let's have a conversation over a glass of wine, and maybe the answer is at the bottom of that.
Any thoughts, Lily?
I mean, it's the same thing. You know, we don't know what we don't know. So I'm sure one day we'll find out what it is that we were missing, and you know, we'll regret it. But at the moment.
Yeah, today I think Finacle takes care of both the worlds. But are they evolving really fast? Are they able to pick up every trend that is emerging? That's an unknown. So whoever picks it up first, I think, so very difficult question to answer actually. So you guys need to sort of inward look and see where is the value.
It's a very philosophical question. Deep thoughts.
Great. Well, I'd like to take this.
I think we have
There's one more.
question there in the end. That will be.
Can't see.
Okay. My question goes to Shaida. You talked about the fintechs delivering solution faster to the market than the banks. Do you see the activities of the fintechs being regulated by the US central bank or any regulatory body in the nearest future? What is the competitive advantage if it is being regulated for the banks?
Do you see the Fed playing a role in regulating?
Yeah, so yes. So the interesting thing is, for a while we thought that the fintechs were sort of immune to regulatory scrutiny, but as it turns out, they're starting to be very much noticed. So they are playing a role in sort of holding back some of the fintechs' ability to grow and expand in the way that they had been previously. So what we're seeing now is that, you know, we're these companies, and we've seen a few of them again today, who spend a lot of time working on and specializing in very niche, very specialized services. Well, they're going to be very good at that, and in a way that a bank that's trying to do lots of different things is never going to be able to concentrate enough energy in everything to be experts in everything. So what we can do, though, is find those partners that are doing their thing very, very well, and then partner with them for those things that we need at the time that we need them, and in a time that the customer needs them. And then make sure that from a regulatory perspective and security and everything else, we've put those wrappers around it so that we're not vulnerable to you know, issues that might happen. So it's like having a bunch of lots of little startups out there working for you. If you can tap into them and have them, you know, create this conglomeration of services that you didn't have to be an expert in, but somebody really smart spent a lot of time thinking about it. I think that's the best of the worlds.
Excellent. Thank you. I'd like to